Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rejoicing Tone. Today, I wanted to talk about a subject called the controlled demolition of Mystery Babylon. And I've been thinking about this subject for the past few weeks. And as time went on and things started happening um, in the world, in the current situation, um, it became more and more clear to me what I think is happening. Now, what I'm about to share with you is just my take. It's just my speculation, basically of what's going on, and therefore it is not something that I'm dogmatic about, or I just wanted to share my thoughts about what's happening right now and how we can see it, because it looks like for people who who aren't aware of Mystery Babylon, it looks like Bible prophecy is being fulfilled in a way, right? And actually, there is a Bible prophecy being fulfilled, but it's not exactly what people think. And it's not that much, actually, because these people, they think that, whole chapters of Ezekiel and of Joel and of all the prophets of the Old Testament are being fulfilled right now, today. And most of it is just smoke and mirrors, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. It's not smoke and mirrors in the sense that it is all fake. I'm not saying that. But it is looking like the real thing while it's actually not. And David Benjamin, I just read a post of him that he made about the situation about Israel and God not dividing, not wanting the people to divide the land, and when you do, God will intervene. And he explained very well in that post that that's going to happen after the second coming, after the second coming of Christ. And that was a very good post. Now, it's not so much that I'm recording this as, as a reaction to this post or anything, because I wanted to record this episode this weekend. And so if you hear a fly, there's a fly in the house. It's the first fly of the spring that I have here. We had a lovely day today, yesterday too, and Friday actually also. We had a great 3 days of sun. It was colder than it was the days before, because actually Thursday was even a better day, and Wednesday too. Actually, we actually had quite some good days, but those days I was working. But now, of course, it was weekend. It's a bit colder, but if you sit outside of the wind, it's actually really warm, especially in the sun. You shouldn't sit outside. You shouldn't sit in the shade or in the wind. But if you sit outside of the wind and in the sun, or even behind a parasol or you call it an umbrella, right? We call it a parasol, an umbrella, and or what's that called? A sunscreen? No, a sun. Well, anyway, it was really nice today. So I've been sitting outside for an hour or so after I went to the beach, and then a fly got in. So that's the first fly of the year. So yeah, that's what you're gonna hear probably. Anyway, back on the subject. So I wanted to talk about this for a while now, and so I'm recording this now. And it just so happened that David posted that post, which, yeah, was pretty fitting with what I'm going to tell you now, what my thoughts are about what's going on. So we have the woman riding the beast. That's the harlot. That's Mystery Babylon. And she's pretending to be the beast, but she's not. And the Bible tells us that in the tribulation, Mystery Babylon is going to be destroyed. And the people of the world will hate her. Now, Mystery Babylon knows about this prophecy. And the people who she controls, or the people who worship her, who worship the woman riding the beast, these people know about the prophecy too. And these people, they don't like things that are outside of their control. They don't like the idea that something may happen to their system that they're not a part of. So, if they believe the prophecy, and I'm sure that they do, then they say, well, let's just do it ourselves. Let's just, let's just self-destruct, but do it in a way that we have control over it. It's the delusion or illusion that they have, and it's a delusion too, that they actually are able to pull this off and come out of the other side as victors, right? As people who won. Because that's not the way it's going to go. Because the destruction of Babylon is actually a judgment by God. Now, can we really tie the fall of Babylon with any of the judgments, like the seals being opened, or the trumpets, or the bowl judgments? No, I didn't. As far as I'm aware, it's just a separate chapter in the book of Revelation where this is being talked about. But everything that happens in the tribulation is basically judgment, and the Bible is pretty clear about it too, because it calls it a judgment too. Mystery Babylon is going to be judged by God. Okay, so whatever they're doing with their self-destruct idea, their controlled demolition, as I would like to call it, is not going to is not going to bring them. It's not going to be the fulfillment of the prophecy, nor is it going to bring them, nor is it going to keep them in control in the long run, right? Because they think, well, if we just do it ourselves, then at the time that Babylon falls, we can raise out of the ashes from it a new world system, right? And then we're going to keep on, controlling things. And that's not the way it's going to go. Because Mystery Babylon is going to be replaced by a new system. And that new system is going to do away with Mystery Babylon like trash, basically. Thank you for your service, but you're no longer needed, right? That's actually what the beast is going to say. What the Antichrist is going to say. And the people of the world will agree with the Antichrist, because they will hate Mystery Babylon. And they are doing their best to make the people hate it. Because what they've been doing the past few years is actually amazing, also in the speed that they're doing it. Because they're really on all sides, they're trying to wake up the people who don't want to wake up to anything dark going on in the world. They're they're doing so much their best to wake people up, but not in a way that it's too much. But in a way, it is too much because it's causing, because it's working. It's and there are enough people who don't want to see it, you know. But these people are basically being forced to see it. One of the ways they're doing it is by destroying the economy. They've been doing that on purpose for the past few years. And right now we're in an acceleration with this thing going on, you know, this war that's going on. It's causing lots of more problems with the economy. A lot of people are already, especially people with not necessarily low income, you know, so even people with an income that you would have called decent just a few years ago, they're struggling. Okay, and more people are going to struggle. And even the people who don't struggle, they still notice they can't do as much with their money as they were able to a few years ago. And that's causing a lot of irritation in a lot of people. And especially now in the people who have higher education, who have better paid wages, better paid jobs, who have a function in society, who, you know, maybe, you know, the people in the municipalities, you know, the representatives or the you know, all the people working for, you know, the lower parts of our government and all that. They're being annoyed too, you know. They're being poked, literally. And they're being poked so that they eventually are going to look at the world and going to say, what's going on? Why are things moving in this direction? And what am I missing here? And this is going to make people look into a lot of things. Now, a lot of things are being, you know, leaked, like the whole Epstein thing. That's causing people to look at what we thought as a decent, you know, system, which may have had some cracks, you know, but a lot of people are now seeing that this system isn't decent at all. And it's actually never been decent. Hollywood has always been a cesspool. The music industry has been a cesspool. It used to be only conspiracy theorists thinking that. People who were considered conspiracy theorists by the mainstream. Now average Joe thinks that. And a whole generation called Gen Z is becoming aware of it. To some extent, some more and some less. But they're being forced into getting into all this because they can't start a life. They can't buy a house for themselves, so they have to stay with their parents. And I'm not just talking about America here. I'm here. It's here in the Netherlands too. Kids stay with their parents far too long right now because the housing market is crazy. That's also the case in Europe. There's, you know, and I can't even say where, you know, it's actually worse. I think it's worse in America, but we're not far away from. We're not far behind or far in front of you, right? It's all over the Western world, basically. So you have this situation where young adults cannot buy a home and stay with their parents until they're 30, 35, maybe even until they're 40, who knows? They can't start a family. Most of them don't even want to start a family Because most of them say, who wants kids in this world? Because this world is so messed up. What is my future? I have no future. What am I looking forward to? Nothing. And then they see the political debates and left against right. And in the beginning, they fall for it. So some choose to be left wing, others choose to be right wing, and they hate each other and they call each other names. And at one point, they realize both sides are corrupt, and more of the young people are getting to that point right now, and it's gonna go really fast. It's going really fast, and then, well, what comes up from that? Hate, the exact hatred that the Bible describes about Mystery Babylon, and Mystery Babylon is actively encouraging people to hate her. Because she thinks, or the people who are her minions think that, well, if it's prophesied, we'd better do it ourselves. So we can keep control. So we can control the thing. But that's their illusion. They cannot control it. Because once the balls of ball start rolling, it's chaos theory. There's a theory. There's a lot of people who have, you can, if you have a, what's that called? Where you have sand inside and you turn it over and then you watch the sand go down. And when the last, piece of sand, the last, sand, what's that called, actually? I don't even know what's that called. Anyway, the last piece of sand drops, then the time is up, right? You know what I'm talking about. I just can't find the English word for it. In Dutch, if I translate it into English, we call it a sand walker. Sounds really strange in English. But let's call it a sand walker. So, okay. So if you study a sand walker, you can... and people have done that, you can pretty much predict where each sand piece falls. But there comes a moment when suddenly the last few sand pieces are going to fall through. And that's always chaos. And you cannot predict how that goes. Therefore, you cannot control it. And they know that too. But they think, well, we could at least try, and we're just going to do that. And I believe that is what they're doing. So they are doing a controlled demolition of Mystery Babylon. And on the other hand, they are trying to do things that can cause believers to think, hey, this is the fulfillment of Ezekiel 38, or this is the fulfillment of whatever prophecy we're talking about. Hey, aren't we actually already in the tribulation? It makes me doubt, are we already in the tribulation? All that. And a lot of people fall for that strategy. And Mystery Babylon likes to confuse believers. Mystery Babylon hates believers, and therefore she loves to play with them and to, to deceive them and to make them go nuts and stress out and say, this is already a tribulation, and, and become drunk of her wine. And a lot of, doomsday channels are doing that. Yeah, a lot of the mid-trib and post-trib channels do that too. They've fallen for the propaganda of Mystery Babylon, and they think that prophecy is actually being fulfilled. But at the same time, what they're doing might actually lead to the exact same thing that the Bible is describing, the hatred of all nations towards, and with nations I don't mean countries, but all peoples, the descendants um, um, of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These are the nations, the descendants of Ishmael, the descendants of uh, Isaac, the descendants of Jacob, the descendants of Esau, the descendants of, who else have we got? Well, all of these, they're all going to hate Mystery Babylon. And so they're doing it. But the fall of Mystery Babylon will not happen before the tribulation. Which means that as long as the restrainer is here, there will always be, I think, therefore, some people who don't hate her and who just are blissfully unaware of things that are going on and are not being irritated somehow, unless we're really, unless the rapture happens like this year, and that could very well be the case. However, whatever the case is, they're doing the controlled demolition of Mystery Babylon. And it's a very dangerous game what they're playing, because just imagine the tribulation is actually, I don't believe that, but just imagine the tribulation is actually 10 or 20 years away. This is way too early. So what they're doing basically is causing a lot of damage to themselves. Because if it's not time yet, and I don't believe it's not time, but what if, we can never discount the possibility. What if it's not time? Then they have to undo a lot of damage, because they're not going to keep control, this way. No way that's going to happen, because they're just causing too much havoc, right? And it's dangerous, because you can't predict, like the sand walker, you can't predict how the last sand is going to fall, how the last pieces of sand are going to fall. You can't predict it. And therefore you can't control it. And what it would also do, it would cause so much instability in the world. And that's why I don't believe it's not yet time. It would cause so much instability in the world that it would really make it difficult for the church to function. And the church right now is going through, and I'm not talking about the brick and mortar church and the fake institutional churches. I'm not talking about that, but the real church, the Church of Philadelphia, is going through refreshing. I wouldn't call it a revival. It's more of a refreshing, the refreshment, right? And God's not going to let that. If we have to fight for our lives, it's going to be really hard. I believe personally, it's going to be really hard for the church to function and to keep on thriving. And so personally, I don't think, therefore, that there's a lot of time left. I do really think that we're really, really close to the rapture. And I think, and I'm sure actually, that Mystery Babylon thinks that too. And that is why she's acting this way. That is why we have this whole Epstein thing right in people's faces. That's why we have all these strange things coming to surface, where people are going to wonder, what is this? Mystery Babylon likes to confuse people. For example, it's just one silly thing, but just I couldn't escape it. I couldn't not notice it. The whole you've probably seen it too. The whole Jim Carrey thing. So there was a person who I didn't recognize at all, and then I saw a thumbnail of a video, and it said something like Jim Carrey, and I saw the face of the man, and I didn't recognize him, and I thought that's not Jim Carrey, and then I watched it, and I still said that's not Jim Carrey, but supposedly that was supposedly Jim Carrey, and then the whole internet went, well, not the whole internet, but a part of the internet went crazy about it and started to speculate, and there are all these wild theories out there, whether that was really Jim Carrey or not, or whether it was a stand-in. Some people even said it's a clone, all that thing. And I believe that's one of those smoke and mirror moments too. It's all seems so staged, right? It's so, and all the some of the more popular channels started talking about it, and then it becomes like too obviously staged, like too much promotion, right? And what's the purpose behind it? It's to make people question Hollywood, and therefore therefore the system, because Hollywood and the system are linked to each other in people's minds. And that's always not always, because we haven't always had Hollywood, but it's like the world of normalcy that embraced Hollywood. And now suddenly, Hollywood is starting to make more and more people ask questions about it. And then, you have all these past interviews of Jim Carrey coming on this, being played, where he is doing the Freemason signs and all that. And then people say, oh, he was trying to warn us. Or other people say, well, he was just mocking us. Or, he's part of it and all that. What it's causing is people are going to pay attention to all that. And it used to be the case that they didn't want people's attention towards that. But that changed quite some time ago, actually. But today, they're like really, really trying to get people's attention, and it's and of course they try to maintain the narrative. They try to steer the narrative, but they can only do that up until a certain point, or up unto a certain point, and after that, it's up to chaos. Well, the sad message is that there is no such thing as coincidental chaos, because God is always in control. So if God is in control, that's the dangerous game that they're playing with their own system. But they're doing it because I believe they are, I wouldn't call it desperate, but they are concerned because they know that, or they believe that the rapture is soon, and therefore God's judgment is going to come. So that's my take. Now, the whole Iran war, I still think, although I really could be wrong about it too, because but I still think that the current Iranian regime is going to fall. But what's going to come in place of it is going to maybe look nicer on the surface. But it's not going to be nice. and could actually be very deceptive to Israel, which in the tribulation would cause them to, to attack Israel with Russia. And that's going to be the Ezekiel 38 war in the tribulation. But maybe there's not going to be a regime change, and somehow they're still going to be able to survive, which if I really look at it, it's really unlikely, because they've been hit hard, and the regime, a lot of people are being eliminated, and there's no end in sight to that too. So it's only and the country is, so many people in this country are hoping for a change, and it's very hard to keep that under literally under pressure, under suppression, if the people see that their leadership is weakening, and it is. So I do see there's going to be a change there too, but it's really hard to say what's going to happen next. Because Mystery Babylon can do her controlled demolition as much as she wants to. There's nothing that she can do that God won't allow her to do. And whatever God allows her to do, we can be sure it will not hinder the church and the building work that God does with the church. And that's also our comfort. It is a comfort that Jesus will provide for us. It is a comfort that we are heirs, sons and heirs, like I said in the previous episode, sons and therefore heirs, right? And it's a comfort to know that God's building work is going to continue up until the end, when it's time for Jesus to get his bride. And then Babylon will be judged, but not by their own controlled demolition. The only thing their controlled demolition will have caused is just that the people hate her. That's what they're actually doing. And that will cause for celebration when the new leader comes into its place, which was going to be the Antichrist. That's probably, that in itself, that may just be that strong delusion that the Bible is talking about, because the people actually feel that they have been that the world has defeated the world. The Antichrist has defeated, or they have defeated, right? They themselves, in a way, have defeated the evil beast. They're gonna think that the beast has now been destroyed. And some people will actually think, in the tribulation, those who are of the fake church, they're going to say or preach or think that, look, Jesus, this is already Jesus's kingdom, and we are making this kingdom happen. Look what we've done. We've exposed them all these evil people. And then comes the Antichrist as a victor and says, I played such a great part, I did this all for you. And now we're going to create a great world. No more hunger, no more pain, no more, we're just going to do it. I'm going to And I'm the Messiah of Israel that Israel has been waiting for. And we're going to just forget the past. We're going to create something new. And that's what's going to happen in the tribulation. And then, at some point, it's hard to pinpoint when exactly, but I believe in the beginning of the tribulation, fairly in the beginning of the tribulation, after the destruction of Babylon, there will be the Ezekiel 38 war. And it may actually be before the fall of Mystery Babylon, but actually I think that the fall of Mystery Babylon happens first, for the exact same reasons that I just laid out. But like I said, this is just speculation, but I wanted to share this because I think that what we're looking at is an attempt to keep the control in situations they know they're not going to be able to control. They know deep inside, that they're not going to withstand the judgment of God or prevent it by doing this, what they're doing right now. So all we can do is just trust in Christ. Trust that He has us. There's nothing to fear. There's absolutely nothing to fear. We are in good hands, and the Lord can rapture us at any moment. I did this series of posts last week, which was called Why Today is a Perfect Day for the Rapture. And I did it, first of all, to remind people right before the whole rapture date-setting season would start again, that for every single day, there are reasons to give why the rapture should happen today. And sometimes they are because there are biblical things that happened on that day which you can link to the rapture. Or nothing actually happened specifically. And then you can say, well, the Lord chooses a new day that nobody knows of, a special day, a special feast day, a hidden feast day for the church. And that's going to be the rapture. And both things can be true. So, therefore, every single day is a perfect day for the rapture. And I wanted to do this series so that while all this is going on, we can remind ourselves. We can remind ourselves that, hey, today could be the day. And that can be a true, if it's not fixed on tomorrow or another date in the future, even if it's the near future, doesn't matter. If it's today, then that is something that is positive. That is something that can comfort you. So we comfort us, or we let ourselves be comforted in two ways. Comforted in two ways. First, the Holy Spirit is the comforter. We trust in the provision of Christ for as long as we are here, and we rejoice in our position as sons and heirs who have been bought by the blood of Christ, who have been adopted by the blood of Christ. And because of Christ living in us, we are now children of God. And therefore, we are sons and heirs. So that's one. And we eat and drink of Christ, and we renew ourselves with the gospel. But second, we're going to be distracted every time we hear something, what's going on in the world. And you cannot shut yourself away from that. You cannot shut it out. It will enter your life. And then this hope, this blessed hope of the rapture, It's so good to have that every single day. And I've been practicing this. And by making these posts, I practiced the idea today could be the rapture. Because I found out after I stopped the rapture watch scene, stopped watching these videos or these channels that are rapture date setters, I found that I also, most of it I don't miss, but the only thing that I missed was the idea that the rapture is really a tangible thing that is really close. Because once I stopped looking at dates, it felt like the rapture became a distant thing again. And I had days where I really felt like, oh, today could be the rapture, but not many. And then I was like, well, this is just me not trying to get too excited, because I have been hurt by getting too excited in the past. But I found out by doing this, by writing these series of posts, that it's completely different if the focus is on today than if it's a date, even if it's tomorrow. If it's today, and it's always today, you're not going into a roller coaster of emotions like, oh, it's going to happen today. And then it turns out it's not happening. And then you wake up completely exhausted and drained and just apathetic, right? Full of, or not full actually, empty, that doesn't happen when you seriously consider that today could be the rapture. Because as soon as the day is over, there is immediately a new today. So there's never a downtime, basically. But you're also never on true high alert, like, ooh, I still have to do some groceries. Let's just make sure that I do the groceries before the rapture or something like that. Or, oh, I gotta write my my goodbye letters, or my left behind letters, right? If the rapture happens tonight, I gotta do it now, because otherwise I may be too late, right? All these things that comes with rapture date setting and date watching. It doesn't happen if your focus is on today. And our focus should always be on today. Christ's provision for today, the gospel for today, the renewing of our minds for today, our inheritance for today. Christ's food and drink, his bread and water, his living water for today. And the rapture for today. And it is our blessed hope. And especially in these times when we're seeing an attempt of controlled demolition, it's definitely a blessed hope. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time.